Good day, my fellow Americans and good people of the world. Today, I would like to address you in regards to the present situation. I know that there are quite a lot of things that are happening in the world that are most unagreeable to quite a few people, but at the same time, there are another portion of people who seem to be getting along pretty well with the state of things. And to me, it's kind of frustrating to see that because, look at the state of the world. This is the way that you want to live. This is the way you want things to be. Why does it give some people like pride and joy to destroy beautiful things when other people like to appreciate every little thing that matters? And I think that the problem is of course our sense of value, what really matters. And there's no way to completely reconcile that for anybody because we all have different life experiences. We live in different individualized world paradigms. We come from very different historical contexts. Our lives as they are now is a different situational context. And in every moment, we find ourselves in a different kind of context, and we have to face the day coming from our place of wholeness and somehow find a way to keep moving forward. I know that there's a lot of people are looking to the current president of the United States as a leader, considering him as, a strong man who knows where he's going and what he's doing and what he's about. And he's bringing us all along with him, right? And if we just let him take the charge and lead the way, he's going to get us to where we need to be, given his idea, of what he thinks is just, fair, reasonable, right. But the problem with that is that when you look at him as a person and you see the way that he acts and behaves, you listen to the rhetoric and watch how he responds when something happens. He automatically goes into attack mode, and he thinks that destroying another person is the only way for him to be able to solve a solution. You find a solution. And using the force of his powers of money, power, influence, and those people who have amassed around him as his means to be able to hold people down and submit them to his will, ends up being a not great situation because what he's doing is victimizing people. And everybody's just in this terrible control drama relationship with him, and it's kind of like a very abusive relationship. And the idea that the only way that we can be led by him is if we are victimized by him, and you have two options if you're going to make it in his world, is you either going to submit and fall in line and he'll designate your place and that's your lot in life, or you'll continue to be a victim and he will continue to use his force to suppress your dissent. And I'm not speaking from a place of bringing in the context of my deep ingrained bias of dissatisfaction with him. I feel pity and disappointment for him because I understand what it is that he's doing, and I can see into his heart and I can see the attitude and direction of his heart, and I know where he's going and where he's trying to lead us. And it's not somewhere I want to go. I'm not okay with the outcomes that he creates. And I continuously think of, where's the opportunity for redemption for him? And it's increasingly difficult to find because he has embedded himself so deeply in this personification of who he is and who he's become. And he has no way to really put himself in the shoes of other people, be empathetic. He can't have sympathies for other people, which is to, care with the desire to actually act, and I believe that he has a plan that he's, gonna force ahead with these things, and he's gonna make it work, however he can put it together, and we're always gonna have to deal with it. We're gonna have to live in the outcome consequences of his past and prior decision making, and whatever types of decision making he's gonna make in the future. But if you look at the context that he's in right now, in the things that are happening just in the short amount of time that he's been in office, and how he's played the hand that he has been dealt, he has been making a lot of moves that distinguish the fact that he really doesn't have a spine of integrity. He doesn't have a sense of knowing who he is. He knows what he's doing in any given second, as long as enough people tell him what's going on. But he doesn't have enough sense of self-awareness and what it's about. I hear him complaining before about how he didn't like being president because it was so confining of his life. His life was so much better before he became president, but he's doing this because, America's messed up and somebody's got to fix it, and so I'm going to be the person that comes and does it. And everybody's like, you're right, America's messed up. We'll get behind you. Thanks for being the brave man to lead the charge, And it's reasonable. It's completely reasonable that people want to see someone come in when things are so bad, to have somebody come in and say, I'm going to fix it, But the problem with that is that there's something fundamentally different between fixing something by, tinkering with it and fabricating and creating, I'm a door builder, a carpenter, so I build. And when I think of analogies to explain things, I often go into the realm of building something tangible. So, how I approach problems is I build systems to extract understandings from it and to understand the fundamental truth there, because that's what everything of importance is going to be able to be built around. Everything else is and doesn't have integrity, and it will eventually fall away. And so when I look at people who are leaders and problem solvers, I look for that thread, that through line of integrity that they have. What's the one thing, the one categorical element to which everything else orbits around in their considerations? And for me, it's, building things in a complex system, and outcomes are very important to me. I want to know that what I do does a thing that, while I may not be able to control the outcome, given my willingness to observe and to learn and to take in relevant content and information from around myself, for relevant stakeholders, experts, and my own sense of historical reference and situational context, and putting these all into a framework of logistical, interpretations of how systems work and how things, parts and pieces can be put together, and, the functionality, in terms of a door, you have to have a very precise way to build a door. Otherwise it's not operational. You just have a bunch of material that's put together, but if it doesn't have the right gap spaces and, the hinges aren't set in just right in your jamb, it's not going to swing open, and you have to know which way the door goes. There's so much that you have to know about the utilitarian aspects of it, the aesthetic aspects of it, the functionality, the, lifespan of it, these sorts of things. You have to know if what you're doing is going to be able to do the thing that you want, given the scenario universe of how it's going to be used as a thing, and then understand that it might be not put to a proper intended use. Sometimes it might go out of the realms of that. And how would it adhere and uphold in that regard? And I've done it plenty of times where I've built fire-rated doors, for like hospitals and for hotels, or I've built storm doors for, tornado shelters and things like that, safe rooms. And those have to be built at a different level of integrity than just a basic, door that's inside of the house. But you have to understand the use functions for them and how they're different. And like with the storm door, you have to know, is this going to be able to withstand, 100-mile-per-hour tornado winds come ripping through? Safe room, is it going to be able to protect the people on the other side of it from whatever might be, trying to get through? And then, just the functionality. Am I going to be able to turn the knob and this door is going to open? You have to have an outcome, proper intended use for something that when you use it, you intend for it to come out this way in the end. And sometimes it doesn't. And you have to consider those sorts of things as well. Is it going to be what you want it to be, or is it going to be something else entirely? You never know. But you have to consider it in the scenario universe, the potentials that are there. And the only way to understand the potentials in the scenario universe is to know the truth. And so that brings me back to what I'm talking about in terms of Donald Trump. He can't adhere to the truth. It's one thing to, make fantastic, elaborative, allegorical renderings to help people, see where I'm coming from, understand what I'm trying to get at here. There's a point to the exercise. And then it's a totally different thing to completely fabricate bullshit, excuse my language, and then sell it off to people as if that's reality, because what you're doing is you're deceiving. And the problem with deception is that all war is based on deception. And so if people don't know a baseline fundamental truth, then they're operating out of lies. And that means that they don't know the right thing to do at the right time. They don't know what's just, what's fair, what's reasonable, what's right. And because of that, they don't have a sense of jurisprudence. Like, what is the just thing to do, And so they will, no matter what, be making bad choices from a bad place. And so he's setting us up for failure by not being able to tell the truth. And those people that are around him, they don't want to tell the truth either. They have no reason to tell the truth because they've made their living in their position of power based off of deception. And I'm not saying that these people are wholly entirely bad people, because I fundamentally believe that, there's good humanity in everybody. And given the right environment, that is what will come out most naturally for people. And then the deceptive part of them just is useless, antiquated, and it goes away. I believe in redemption. It's a true, authentic power. But so long as you are living in an environment where you're being reinforced and encouraged to continue to be a deceptive person because you live in a lie with other people who live in the same lie, then you are living in an experience that is an alternate reality. And because of that, you can't make the right choices for yourself. You can't make the right choices for your family members because you're operating off of inconsistencies. And the problem with that is, people call it karma, but there really is a karmatic retribution of time. Things will eventually, whether you choose to or not, fall back in alignment with truth and reality. And on that day, as I call it, of your personal revelation, truth's going to hit you and you're going to have to face it. And if you have enough power, money, influence, other deceivers around you that are, they're all in on the same deception. And so, they got to protect what they've invested their, lives and their sense of self into, they're going to fight to hold on to it. They're not going to let it go, and they will protect you because it protects their interests, sort of thing. It's a mutually reinforcing, what do they say in the terms of like mutually assured destruction when everybody has a nuclear weapon? Well, let's use it in an analogy in the sense of like the lies that people live in is like everybody has a nuclear weapon, and their moment of truth, their personal revelation is gonna come eventually. And, the fallout from that nuclear moment could potentially harm so many people in proximity, and then have residual, fallout effects transcending to, so many other people, whoever is connected to that. So it becomes a really dangerous position to be in because you don't know, right? You don't know what's right. So you can't make the right decisions at the right time to be able to see the convergence of that point that says, guess what's going to happen? Look what's on its way. And if you're living in deceptions and lies, you're not making the right decisions. You are disregarding truth and reality. And so when it hits you in the face constantly saying, hey, this is the truth, get back in alignment with it, because that's what karma does. And I'm not talking karma in some woo-woo way, but like literally the point in which the pattern of alignment comes to you, a broken clock is right at least twice a day. There is going to be a point in time where everything converges back into it. And at that point in time, what's going to be the fallout from that impact? You don't necessarily know if you're not aware of what the truth is. It's also another thing to know that you're deceiving somebody intentionally, and doing so in such a way that is like, I'm living in truth, I'm telling you lies, and so I don't have to live in the consequences of the actions of what you take based off of what I'm giving you that's misinformation. And the problem with that, especially in the terms of like the news, when you have people that are supposed to be informants, people who are informing society, and they're giving you information that is like a twisted fact attack, or it's misconstrued in some way intentionally, it's portrayed in such a way that makes it more palatable and reasonable, even though the truth that they're like sugarcoating the shit in is really a very bad thing. And so people end up accepting a lie because it seems close enough to the truth. And they live out from that as being the truth. And so they're naturally kicked off of the alignment of there's one path and one way of truth and pattern in the universe. And we all follow it naturally. And the only time we aren't in alignment with that is when we're angry, sad, miserable, everything's messed up. The only time you are in alignment with it is when you're happy, you feel joyful, you feel good, you feel fulfilled and accomplished, That's how you know. It's like the flow state is, sports people, even NASA astronauts say they've been trained to get into that flow state because everything just comes most natural. That's being in alignment with truth and reality as it is. So if you have somebody who is considered a voice of authority and you're listening to them and they're telling you lies intentionally to throw you off course of the truth, because if you knew the truth, it would have consequences for all these people over here that lie is sheltering and shielding and protecting, so that they can stay in that position of power that they use against you, because your ignorance is your weakness that they exploit. So you are put at a disadvantage intentionally by their words. They know, not necessarily saying that means that they know the truth, but they know what they're telling you ain't the truth. And that's enough for them. And it kind of seems almost like because they themselves don't understand what the truth is, they're just going to make shit up intentionally. So at least they know that if they can convince you this is what the truth is, and you know yourself that that's not the truth, then we know you're going to be operating out of a lie, and then we can just set up, traps along the way to catch you in your lie, and then eventually call you out for it, or eventually get to the point where you fall in a hole and you're like, oh, look, you fell in a hole. look what happened when you went down the wrong path, here, I'll sell you a ladder to get out of that hole, but it's going to cost you because this is the last ladder I have, and then you get exploited for the position that they put you in. And it's unfortunate that this sort of thing happens, but that's what the President of the United States of America, POTUS 47, is doing that to America right now. And so is his regime. And I don't even like to call it an administration because there's no administering going on in anything that they do. It's like playing damn Russian roulette, sticking the bullet in and, shooting at whatever is in the way and hoping that they're going to make a hit on something that's going to make enough fanfare that they can, roll it in the credits of the next media news cycle, get a lot of attention for it, because they don't care if it's good or bad attention. They just want to be the center of attention, because you're so busy focusing on that and trying to figure out what the truth is in there, and then who's the right voice to listen to. And so many people get to deceive you in that regard. In the meantime, you have no time to critically think for yourself and be like, wow, if I put myself empathetically in the shoes of my fellow Americans that I see are living out in the outcome consequences of the negative decisions that people in positions of authority are making right now, I would say to myself, I wouldn't want my fellow American to suffer in that way. I would not wish that experience on anyone. I could sit here all night and list out the victims of circumstances that did not exist until the POTUS 47 regime came in and altered reality as such to, cause all these disruptions and whatnot that came with fallout that many people are suffering from. I have people that are close to me that are suffering deeply and immensely from this. I myself have managed to make out of the situation lemonade out of the lemons, because that's what I do. I see a situation and, I just find ways to set things right. And sometimes it's more difficult than other times because of the capacities that I have. I'm but one person and I'm limited in my circumstances. There's only so much that I can do, but I do everything that I can. And I'm especially there to help those people that are around me that need some sense of support. And I am fortunate enough and blessed enough to be in a position where I can go be a caregiver and be of service to them to help to ease their burden a little bit. But that's just naturally who I am as a person. That's a soul print value for me. That'll always be the case. It doesn't matter who I am or how big I get or how irrelevant I am in the world. Like, I am always going to be a helper. I'm always going to be a caregiver there to help people. But because it's important to me to champion for people to become their best version, because I want to see and I want to bring that out in people, because that's what brings out the best in me too. And it's a natural tendency. I'm a nurturer. I'm a caregiver. I'm a lover, not a fighter, although I do fight in a sense of standing up for what's right. I have righteous anger and I will use it accordingly, but in a rectifying way, not in a vengeful way. Aggressive retaliation is not something that I have as a natural part of my being. It takes such a tremendous amount of fault to break me in the capacity that would render me into such a low. But I'm human. Capacities, we all have them. But it's certainly something that I will put myself in a position of extreme ownership to make amends, find my way back into love in the situation, even when it's hard. But because that's important to me, and I know it, may be a difficult thing to do, but it's important to me, because to me, I need to live in the best truth I know. The best truth I know is that I love everybody and I want to see everybody do great. I believe in redemption for everyone. And I believe in that karmatic retribution of time and that personal revelation for people. And I always pray that in that moment, grace will find people, that this situation won't be so bad for them that they have to live in perpetual torment forever, because who would want that? I would never wish that on anyone. But it's important for people to understand pain in order for them to recognize why you don't afflict others, you know? So the problem with the POTUS 47 regime, and I include in that the MAGA cohort, which isn't necessarily, you know, everybody who believes in the MAGA, you know, hype, but more like the people who are like, I'm aligning everything in my life with making this happen, you know, MAGA everything, and they're willing to sacrifice everything that matters in order to make MAGA be the thing that matters. When you look at it, it really isn't rendering value to the world. Literally, as they're trying to make America great, they are failing to do good. And that's what is important. We need to do good in the world. And we need to help people to live the good life. And that can't happen if great is defined by people who think that how to build up greatness is to put everybody else at a disadvantage, make them suffer in that, and then they come in and then they play savior, and then take the claim to, see, we fixed the problem. It's kind of like with POTUS 47 saying, you know, price of eggs have already gone down such and such percent, you know, but he fails to tell you that he jacked it up, you know, all more than that percentage, and it realistically is still higher than it was before he came into office, you know. So he's giving you a narrow view of things and extracting information out of that, that makes it seem like it's, you know, the truth and it's good, but in reality it's like, but if you take a couple extra steps back from there, you see realistically that's not a better situation. You haven't improved my life at all, you know? And so, again, I'm not saying this because I'm not okay with the, like, fight the system, angrily pushing against everything. Although, like, spending time, I just recently came back into using social media after being away for a very long time, other than a few bits of coming in here and there. I have just found it an increasingly incoherent place that I just can't seek and find the truth in, because it is distorted by way too much deception and like the worst of humanity being promoted and shoved in your face, and it's like, it doesn't give me a sense of good feelings. So I look for happiness and joy, and I look for that place of belonging that is, you know, intrinsic to my sense of goodness. Going back into social media after a long stay away, I have found myself kind of caught up in the, you know, the moment of anger and frustration. But every time I try to respond, it's to help them improve. Not just like the people that I'm talking about, like, gosh, I really wish this person that's doing the wrong thing, in my perspective right now, would do this, because that would be, in my opinion, what would be able to rectify the situation. You know, and everybody does that in their own way. I don't try to, like, kill the spirit in a person when I criticize them. I try to show them the thing by which is the fault, and you know, the point of contention, so that you can recognize, when you understand the point of contention, within the point of contention is the liberating element as well. It's two sides, same coin. So when it's pointed out, as long as you're taking it in a constructive way rather than destructive, you can transmute it into a positive growth experience. And that's what I try to do. But sometimes you get caught up in the emotions, especially when it's things that are just terrible. Like, my God. I'm listening to people get on there being like, guys, they just cut off funding for a research study that was making it so that I can afford this medication that happened to be saving my life from this really not well-known disease, and that study research is just cut off and they can't continue, and now I'm afraid I'm gonna die. I read stuff like that, and it is so much of an unnecessary experience of pain and suffering for me. And not to make it selfish, but I should not have to worry about the well-being of my fellow human who, just a few short months ago didn't have this problem. They didn't have to worry about their life being on the edge of a fucking cliff. Their life wasn't perfect because they were still dealing with, this unknown sickness. But the one thing that was holding them up and helping them and giving them hope was ripped away from them because somebody failed to see that there was value in it. And people getting online talking about, I lost my job. How am I going to pay for my house? I'm going to go bankrupt, There's so much. The spectrum of human suffering is just so tremendous right now. It's overwhelming. But that's part of the reason why I decided to go back to social media, was because I knew this was a point in history and time I couldn't stay away. It was much bigger and more important than the reason why I left, for my reason to have to come back, because I knew that I needed to see what the people were saying, what they were experiencing right now, so I could find a way to help set things right, put things back on the right trajectory that diverges away from this negative continuum of outcome consequences that are harming people unnecessarily, and in many cases cruelly, because people who are making those decisions are laughing about the fact that they have that power to take away, what used to be in possession of these other people, and they laugh about it because it makes them feel good that they had the power to, and then it makes them even happier that there's literally nothing these people can do about it to stop it, because there's no corrective mechanism in the system that has ever had to account for somebody coming in to be so careless and so callous and so inconsiderate and so unconscious of what they're doing, not to see even 2 steps ahead of their decision making. And it hurts my heart, especially because I've been working most of my life to find a way to be able to set a course trajectory for humanity that's leading us in an ever more healthy, sustainable, just, and peaceful continuum. And I've worked really hard to figure out how to synthesize all of the means and the modes, given what we have in totality of resource and capital and agency, our capabilities, where our technology trajectories are going, what is the cultural, socio-cultural, paradigm that people live in, what are the things that are the injustices in the world? Where are the things that we say are justice but aren't being enforced? And, what are the things that bring people joy and excitement and entertainment? What's our arts and culture, our roots in arts and culture? And, how do we live our lives? And where in all of that, why is there keep being these moments of human suffering happening? And most of it is centered around money and things that are not really of genuine value, useless consumer trinkets that are a part of a waste is growth, capitalistic free market society that has no proper intended use as to why it even functions as a means of exchange. And many of the people in the decision-making roles right now in the upper echelons of society, the people who are, at the top of the food chain, so to speak, in terms of who gets to make the decision, and then we all have to live in the consequences of it, and our choices are limited by their context that they set for us. Those people don't care enough to bring it down to the micro size, and then build up from there a vision of the macro as to, okay, well, this is how the system functions. And if we, turn the gears in this way, we know that the system is going to be able to bring everything down to rest on the strongest point of our focus is on the individual being empowered. Because when you empower the individual, they then are empowered with the capacity to uphold themselves, and then they can uphold those around them. It's a strengthening of the integrities of the individual is what gives strength across the board. Especially if we're in a hierarchical society, lower echelons of society need to be individually strengthened so we have a solid, firm base by which we can hold up the rest of, civilization. Because we do need to have people who are in, positions of higher orders of decision making, which is what governance is supposed to do. So they can make decisions for us because their job is to see the bigger picture and understand how everything interlinks together and how we might turn this gear here and, cut this corner here, but then, refine this curve on this side to get the right type of shape. So we have, the aesthetic appeal. This looks beautiful. And then the experience feels great, and then in terms of like what it's supposed to do, it does it well, and it's built to last. This isn't going to last just a short amount of time. Like, okay, that's what they're supposed to be doing in positions of government. But we don't have thinkers like that in government. We see people that are like, look at all these cool buttons and knobs and levers and, and they get in this position because they're like power. And they start effing with stuff that they don't know really how it works. And so when they, press a button and it breaks something, way over here, half across the United States, they don't know. They're just looking at the button. What does this button do? They don't know that it's over here, causing people to no longer have access to food and shelter and water and healthcare, and it's undoubtedly that there have been people that have died just in the short amount of time that this regime has been in place, that would not have, their life could have been prolonged. Their lifespans have been intentionally shortened because of this regime. They could have lived a longer life if they had been given the right situational context to live in and welcomed into a situation they could have thrived in. They would have done great and they would have had a much better life, but instead their lives were cut short because of the renderings of poor decision making by those who have been given, power to which they cannot take responsibility for. And so when I think about how much I see them failing, and I think about my work and all of the ways that I can see it, making so that is just like innovated out. Literally everything they're doing is innovated out. So I think that I have an easier time of accepting what's happening because I see a clear path of solution. To me, this is a problem that's already been solved. It's just a matter of implementing the right things, the right time, the right way, in the right order. There's a pattern and a rhythm to it all, and I can see how it can be orchestrated and conducted, and how it can be influenced, how people can be empowered in the lower echelons of society to become part of the process, participate and contribute. And if they can do what they can do where they are in whatever ways they can, and knowing they have a proper intended use that they're working towards that is, adding up in effect with everybody else's contributions so that we can get a thing done, everything that we're suffering in right now is very easily solved. Easy doesn't mean that it's like done, in a day. Easy meaning that like it's in alignment with truth, and so it's a part of the flow. It will be a natural process that everybody will just naturally align in as long as they live in the same truth and they're not trying to fight against it. be like, no, it should be a different way, because if it's a different way, I can get the leverage of power, and then I suddenly become rich off of the suffering of others. That's where we're at right now. It's the problem paradigm that we're in. But by making the power mechanisms decentralized and everybody gets to have the capacity to contribute, it makes it so that we're all working together as one to push the lever, but no one person can do it alone, because that's the way the lever itself is designed, if that makes sense. This is why I believe in the necessity for us to establish a new branch of government, a fourth branch, the civics branch. And the reason why is because I see it as an opportunity to make a fourth branch so we have a better equalizing system of separation of powers in government. It helps the people to have the capacity to hold representatives to account to their responsibilities to the individuals that they represent. And then when they start doing corrupt things, they can be held to account by the people in ways that are not having to go through, a long, expensive process of the justice system, or in a dangerous situation of public dissent in, going and marching and whatnot, where especially what you see being created right now is a police state, where the POTUS 47 regime is setting the stage for everyday Americans to be easily deemed a threat and punished and disappeared. And they have no moral qualms about it at all. They don't have any sense of moral legitimacy at all to realize how truly fundamentally wrong that is. And so because of that, I know having a anti-corruption mechanism and exploitation position for people to be in, and then the people themselves are the corrective mechanism that we can set things right when they start to go wrong. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. It actually will take significant amount of participation and contribution from everyday people to decide, instead of all your sordid interests of like fighting angrily, with this rebellion of against the regime, join forces together to work on crafting delineate and define what the language of the constitutional amendment should be. I've been spending a lot of time defining what that is. I have a lot to contribute in terms of, what I believe that can be. Everybody should come in and bring that in and can synthesize it into a cohesive language that then can be presented in a bill, sent in through Congress in legitimate means for it to then be transmuted in from a bill into a law. And it would become a constitutional law, which means it's deeply embedded in the core structure of our governance. And then it puts the people in a position of having, their independence protected. It's an insulary protection for the independent person that gives them an extra layer of self-defense against, enemies, foreign, and in this case, domestic. So when POTUS 47 regime says we're going to come in and we're going to do this thing because we say so, the people literally would say, but that's not what we said. That's not what we agreed upon. I mean, imagine the situation where we still have voting, but that's how we vote those who are our representatives. But they have to then enter a contract with the people based off of whatever they campaigned on. Like, I campaign promise I'm going to do X, Y, Z, 1, 2, 3. And then when people are voting for you, they're saying, okay, we're creating a bonded contract with one another that you hold up your end of the bargain, we'll hold up our end. Because we'll accept that's, what we've agreed is going to happen. And we're going to agree to work towards that together. And then whoever gets elected is held to account to have to follow through on X, Y, Z, 1, 2, 3. And if they don't, there's corrective mechanisms in the fourth branch that can pivot them, force them into compliance, force them back into alignment, and do so in such a way where we don't have to like fight it out in the streets. Like the Constitution was literally made so that we don't have to forcibly overthrow a government. We can do so at the ballot box. We can make those decisions at the ballot box. And if those people are not doing what they said they were going to do, we can make corrective adjustments in other ways. And by giving the people themselves a branch of government that has decision-making authorities, and are able to use the leverages of that position to be able to make sure that these people that are, make campaign promises to you are following through on what they said they were going to do. And if they start doing things wrong or bad, or you find like there's a huge conflict of interest here, like people are, removing existing contracts so they can replace it with their own business contracts and make a bunch of money off of it. Like that is a deeply corrupt thing to do. And I'm not okay with that outcome, because even if, sure, you may save a little bit of money and sure, it's going to be more efficient, maybe the system's even better. If that's the case, then you apply for approval and assistance from somebody else outside of the realm of yourself that makes those decisions. You can't just embed yourself into the system and say, hey, this is the way it should be, because if I just had all the control, everything would work. And it's like, maybe that is the case. Maybe it could be that way. But don't you for a second think that our system allows for somebody to just implant themselves in like a virus to everything and taint a whole system to make it irreversibly tainted by your system. Like, we have to be able to have a say too. That's what a democracy is about. Like, we don't want you to do that. We want to make sure that it's the best person there, but we're not just going to take your word for it, because you can't tell us whether you have a conflict of interest or not, because it would in itself be a conflict of interest if you had to inform whether or not you had a conflict of interest. It's a weird paradoxical thing, but it's an obvious stated truth. So when you think about what's happening right now, I'm not okay with anything they're doing. They're not caring about the, kitchen table concerns of everyday Americans. They're not doing anything for people. And being somebody who spent my entire life looking at how we can fix the things that are broken, it's like, if I was in their position, I certainly wouldn't be doing it the way that they're doing it, I know how to make the government efficient. I know how to help the people to live the good life. I know how to provision the lower echelons of society, welcome them into a situation they can thrive on, get everybody spontaneously cooperating in a collective cultural shift to align and attune with an ever more healthy, sustainable, just, and peaceful, resilient America, so that, America works for 100% of the people here in the shortest amount of time possible without ecological offense, without the disadvantage of anyone, so that nobody gets left behind, and so that we know that we're working on a proper intended use together. That solves for all of the supposed problems that, the POTUS 47 regime is saying exists. And everything that was not so great about America up until the point where they came in, to wrecking ball it all away and then replace it with whatever they think is going to be best. There were ways to make the existing systems become better, and they didn't take the time to figure that out. And I did take the time to figure that out. And I do know that there are plenty of things. It's like, if we build this thing over here, it now makes this old model that existed over here in kind of a janky, antiquated way, but it was working. We build this one over here as an auxiliary unit, and then we allow the transition of dependency to go into the auxiliary unit long enough that we can take the weights off of the system, of the old system, start to slowly break it down and shut it down without pulling the rug out underneath everybody. And then while you're breaking it down on this side, you then take away the workforce that was working on the older system and slowly move them over to help grow the auxiliary system out. So it's decrease and increase in growth, and you can do them simultaneously. And when you do that, you have what could be deemed deficiency. And then like the specific details of how that works is like the parts of the plans that, I've thought through very well, but certainly POTUS 47 regime hasn't thought about that. They have no idea what that looks like. They have no idea where they're going. They have not thought it through. It's like a fly by the seat of your pants, moment to moment, reality TV show that has a bunch of fake people spewing deception to everyone, putting on performances, and the whole thing's a shit show, and bread and circus are all around. In the meantime, human suffering is happening unnecessary. And so many people are enraged and outraged and heartbroken, and it's sapping our life force. And the more that happens, the more they're gaining the life force, and that's what happens in a control drama. They're literally taking our energy from us. And it's really unfortunate. And I know this was kind of like a necessary evil. I hate saying that because the word has different context to other people, but for me, it literally means that, by necessity, this happened, because without this happening, it would not put people in the mind state where they would be receptive to the idea of doing things differently in such a way that would have to change their life, because people are really, they don't willingly accept change. Doesn't matter how wonderful and shiny it is, they are hard to accept change unless they're all in on the change. So that's where the fanfare of the MAGA movement was to get people all in on it. It's like, it's gonna suck for a while, guys, but then eventually it's gonna be good. Like the concept of, Musk wanting to come in and do the chainsaw effect with like what the president of Argentina has done. That model, I don't agree with it at all, because I know that he has caused unnecessary suffering to his people for his lack of care. But their situation was very different than America's. And to think you can just come and do that here because we should just do this to everybody and was wrong. I don't think that Musk, has the capacity for caring about what actually matters in terms of an us. He's very much about an us, like a smaller group of people that he cares about. He has a very small area of concern. And so while those people within the area of concern there may see a different side of him and appreciate those values from him, his decision making in where his focus is only here, but his consequences are happening in the wider sphere of society. And then he doesn't care the fact that there's consequences, and there's no reasoning with him to be like, dude, like, we're losing everything that matters to us, and we're suffering, please stop. And there's no way to critique him, there's no way to get through to him. Like, there's nothing that can speak to his heart in a reasonable way to say, care about what you're doing. Like, where is your sense of craft? And he doesn't have craftsmanship, and I know that's the reason why I very much believe I don't belong in his world. It's not that I hate Elon. I don't hate anybody, I've tried to hate people. It's hard to do. It really is hard to do for me. I get righteously angry at people, and it's always just like a super high intensity degree of pity and disappointment that I feel for them, and righteous anger, and it's always just about transmuting that fire down into how might I consider a way that in that person's moment of revelation, grace can still find them. And if that's the case, only God can judge. And I'm not a religious person at all, but I know that the order of the universe will judge them according to their works. And so I don't need to exact that. That's out of my hands and, beyond my control, and justice will be served when it needs to be. I just always think, like, how might there still be a moment of grace for the people when that moment comes, so that they don't have to think in regards to how they did me wrong or other people wrong. I don't want them to think that that they can't possibly be forgiven. And so I always, pray for that, like, you're absolutely forgiven. Don't carry that burden with you. All you have to do now is to understand how, why you're out of alignment. Where, when can you fall back in alignment? What do you got to do? And do that. And then when you're ready to take that step in the right direction, be there with you to help you out, because that's what we're here for. But I still get, righteously angered about it, because that's the fire within me that says, okay, I got to go to work. How do we fix this situation? How do we set things straight? How do we set things back, set the record straight, set things back the way it's meant to be, get everybody in alignment and attunement? But I don't think anybody is irredeemable. I just think that the moment of the revelation is a very dangerous place for themselves and others. And the only way to, make that least impactful to anybody else is to remove them from certain considerations and concentrations of power, kind of, negatively sanction them, isolate them, until their decision making is no longer allowed to make such big decisions that can have consequential impacts on other people. I'll explain it this way. What social sanctioning does, or sanctioning of any type, is like enclosing an individual in a room, and they're sitting in a chair, and they're surrounded by a million eyes that is watching their every move. And those eyes are reflecting back onto the individual everything that they see. And that person then has to internalize what's being seen, knowing that they can't change what the other person sees. You can't change what's being reflected back. That it is what it is. The only way to change what's being reflected back is to internally go inside and make a change from within. And then what's reflected outside of you would change. Is literally the only way to fix the problem of a person who is out of control. And I know that everybody has the capacity within them to redeem themselves, but society has to be able to have the capacity to hold them to an account where they have to go through that process, because if they're not forced to go through that process, they won't go through that process on their own, and then they'll never change. So I think that that's where the job and the duty of the people have to be able to, as they say, speak truth to power, be the million eyes reflecting back to them who they are and what they're doing. And not in a way where it's like, fuck you, you piece of shit, you're hurting people and, you're an asshole. I mean, yeah, sure. It feels good in the moment to be like, give somebody the bird and be frustrated. Sometimes you just really just want to slap somebody in the face to wake them up. Like, the fuck, Not that I feel that way at all, like the capacity to hit somebody, but like me coming from a position of what I've seen other people, how they respond. I have been on the other side of the hits before. So I see that boiling point that somebody gets to, and they get so mad at you for being a way that's made them frustrated. And so I understand it. But that doesn't solve for anything, because it creates another problem, because now you have another point of conflict that you have to work out somehow. But the original root conflict still not worked out. It's just a conflict on top of a conflict, and it's like a multi-layered cake that you can never get down to the center core of it, to be able to distill it down to what needs to be focused on, which is the one element that is the point of contention, which in any and all cases is really just a misunderstanding. It's hard to figure out what that means, especially if you can't get into alignment with people that are willing to tell the truth and be honest and trustworthy. But everybody has that capability if they're invited and welcomed into that situation. Once you get into that sphere of influence with one another, where you're willing to put it all aside, whatever has come before, because all that matters now is the find context, where we find ourselves now. And then as we start to communicate with one another about how we see this, what we understand to be the best truth that we know, as it relates to this point of contention, and all parties involved address what they think this point of contention is. I like to reference it as like the elephant in the room. Like, this is the thing that we're talking about, and we're each describing it in different parts. And what's the little allegorical story or whatever about the blind people that are touching an elephant, and they're describing it. One of them has the trunk and it's like a snake, and one of them has the ear and it's like, oh, it's like a leaf, and another one's like touching its tail. It's like, they think that it's different things because they're touching different parts, but they're all blind. They don't actually see what it is, and they don't realize that what they're touching is not the same from every perspective. And the perspective that they have and the perception, like how they're sensing it, you may not be able to see, but there's other ways to make sense of it. And then how they have the words to describe what that is their proposition. Well, they got the trunk. This is a snake. It's long like a snake, must be a snake. And so propositions, your proprioposition, like where you are you at the tail that could also be considered like a snake, is just a thin one? Or, you're at the trunk, are you at the ear? Like, what part are you at? So it's like where you are, when you are, in terms of, the describing of it. It's like, how much have we actually figured out about what is this elephant at this point? So where you are, when you are, and then who you are in terms of like, how trustworthy are you? Are you really telling the truth? You're being like, no, guys, it's this thing. And then everybody's like, oh yeah, okay, all right, I can see it that way. And the person's over here, ha ha ha, I lied. Oh my gosh, it's so funny to watch them do the wrong thing. It's great. But then you realize later on, when these people are starting to make decisions based off of the lie that you gave to them, you're living in the fallout outcome consequences as well. And because we're not living in truth together, things could go wrong. Maybe you've convinced them that this huge, enormous elephant that could literally crush you is nothing threatening at all. It's like as harmless as a mouse. And then the fucking thing sits on you and you die. Or you break a leg or something like that. It's like, if you would have known this is a big thing that's kind of dangerous and we should watch out, give ourselves a little space and distance from it, you would have acted and behaved more differently. So it's about creating a sphere of trust in which everybody's inside of it and realizes, okay, we're trying to figure out this thing together. What's this elephant in the room? How does it work? What part do you have? Tell us the best truth you can about it so we can figure this out and understand what we're working with. And then from there, be able to make decisions that are appropriate, and take action in a way that has a proper intended use, like we are intended to achieve this very specific outcome. And only at that point in time can you be, centered in trust with an individual where you can start to actually build things together that are mutually beneficial. You have achieved mutual respects, mutual interests, mutual securities, mutual benefits, mutual trust. And in that case, it becomes like, instead of having your two eyes, your two hands, your 2 feet, your single person's sense-making qualities, you have this sense-making qualities of another, and then you do, as they call it, the mind meld, and then you see how everything interrelates, and you're like, oh, well, we got a bigger, better picture of what it is we're looking at here. And from there, you can make even more informed decisions. And that's why we need each other, because we can't make those decisions alone. So I really wish that we can get into that type of position, because then when something happens, there's a point of contention, there's a conflict of interest, there's a conflicting side. You're the bad people, you're the good people, subjectively, whatever that means to an individual. Well, what does that mean to you? What's good, what's bad? What's evil, what's righteousness? How do you see that that's different? How can we put it together and come to a reasonable understanding of what that actually means, so that we can, transmute it? Because this is the fact of the matter, is that there's always going to be polarities to everything. There's going to be a massive extreme this way, a massive extreme this way. And they are literally the forces holding everything together. That's how the world works. But we have to be able to transmute the extremes and concentrate it to a center equilibrium, so that things can move in a way that is not making us roll out of control in one way or the other, but rather able to, oscillate and move together as one cohesive unit. When I think about this is in the concept of war, I think it works pretty much the same exact way. I believe that dialogue is the best way to be able to resolve any and all conflicts. It doesn't matter what the scope or scale. It doesn't matter the, triggering event, historical reference, historical context, the situational context, the fine context, all of those things. Still, it's just a misunderstanding, and the only way to solve it is to come to an understanding with each other. And I don't believe that understanding comes by negotiating terms and conditions of submission. It literally is about, how can we find the point of mutualities, so that I know from now on we live each in the best truth that we know. Like, this is how we live in alignment with the truth together. And we should be building things and weaving the fabric of creation in alignment with that, because it will be our best interest, because we're not going to have a negative outcome consequence down the road, and I see that in any type of human relationship. The only way to get to that point with people is if you're not in the, ego's worthless defense mode, and you're not trying to control the situation, dramatize everything, and make it a big problem. To me, I try to find the individuals who I can have conversations with, who are able to listen without trying to make the conversation outcome a position by which exploitation can happen. I like situations where you gain advantages from each other in mutualities. Everything that I do is literally about, how do we get everybody to work together really well, to do really good things together. And it's hard to do when everybody wants to pit against sides and faction and whatnot. I am, again, okay with social sanctioning because it's vital, it's necessary, it delineates and defines what is civic society. You know, we need to inculcate social and civic ideals with one another. That is one means by which we can do so. But I don't like infighting. I don't like seeing people destroying lives, destroying property, you know, destroying, you know, people's credibilities and things like that, destroying their lives or their a sense of value and worth, destroying beautiful things. I'm not okay with those sorts of outcomes. They really cause me to be very disturbed. It hurts my heart and my mind, and they go to work to try to reconcile, you know, and the only way to reconcile it is knowing that that problem is solved. Not necessarily saying I'm the one that's going to solve it, but if in my head, in my heart, I can see the truth through line through the situation, I know it's real, it exists, it's there, and it's resonant with my sense of truth, and I always stay in alignment with that, then I know that eventually everything's going to be okay in due course, in good timing. So I don't have to worry about it. Forgiveness is already there on its way, and when it arrives, I will be joyful. But then it's the internal, you know, dealings for myself is like, well, I then have to come into acceptance. So I have to go through my personal grieving process of my loss of, you know, what I could have been and my life had not been trajectoried in a different direction by misplacing trust. But we all do that, you know, like when I misplace trust in somebody else, they've obviously misplaced trust in me too, because if we are harming each other, that means we're not living in the best truth that we know, and that's because we're out of alignment with our through line of truth. And that doesn't necessarily mean it was an intentional, malicious thing, although it could be in some regard. It eventually could become that, you know, once things get out of control. But, you know, it could just be a complete misunderstanding that just snowballed effect. And then you have to find a way to come back into that, but you still have to accept the loss of what your life was, could have, would have, should have been, but it's not. So who cares? Well, you do. And these are the ways that you do. You have to come to acceptance with that. And then once you do, come out on the other side a much better version of yourself. That's literally the one process that we get to deal with those sorts of situations. But it takes a intentional, motivated, you know, thoughtful process to make that happen. And not a lot of people are willing to go through it because it's a personal journey of self-discovery of what it's going to take to better improve yourself so that you can stay in alignment with your own, the best truth that you know. And we owe it to ourselves and we owe it to each other to do that, because that's how we live together in a sphere of trust and understanding. And so what I'm hoping for in sharing all this is to show a bit of the behind the scenes process in terms of like how I see the world, how I perspective the world, why I care, why things matter to me as they do, because it's really important to me that we live in a better world, because I care about you, you know, I care about everybody that I love, and knowing the more of us that are living in alignment with truth, the world does get better. It's literally as simple as when you focus on the good gets better. But it's also true, if you focus on the bad gets worse. And now think of that in the context of what's happening in society. If POTUS 47 regime is all about everything's bad and we're going to do this thing that's wrong, we're going to offend this person, we're going to break this in this way, you know, we're going to take away everything that we've built together as a society to give us a sense of stability and security and normalcy. We're going to oust all of that kind of stuff. Everybody's focused on that, and then you're feeding energy into it. And I try to break away from it as well, but I do go into it still because I need to be informed. Like, well, how bad could it possibly be from here? It's like, oh, every day it gets worse, you know, and it will continue to be, because guess what? We are on an outcome continuum, negative continuum outcome. So it's going to continue to be negative. It's going to be outcomes that are going to be negative, and it's going to be on a continuum, and it's not going to stop until they stop making it bad and start fixing what's wrong, get back in alignment with truth, or some external force comes in and says, nope, we're going to confine you in this sphere, and we're going to hold you to account, and we're going to sanction you until you get back into order. And with that, I wanted to share kind of briefly why it is that I'm so calm and poised in this situation, because it's not just, as I said, you know, like, I know that eventually karmatic retribution of time is going to set everything straight, but I care deeply about the wrongs that are happening right now, and I want to protect people from that. I want to literally save them from the, you know, destruction and chaos and mayhem, because they don't deserve that. But again, I see the through line of how to solve this, so I can be poised. I have clear eyes, clear conscience. I know the truth. I can see the truth through line through everything, and I can follow that trajectory and see we're going to be all right, guys, you know. And so because of that and that clear-eyedness, which I have refined over the years through my work, that's how I can see that everything's going to be all right. Every little thing's going to be all right, right? So I wanted to share a little bit about my work to help to kind of show why it is that I know what I know. So this is my eudaimonian philosophy, being well. Both individually and together, we bear the responsibility to steward the living planet Earth, as well as human society and civilization. The good work begins with stewarding our home space and our life spaces, so that we can steward our self-actualization within a peaceful paradigm that is under our control, and it's under our authority, and it's within our possessions. This is our personal dominion. And once we gain mastery of our dominion and mastery over ourselves, then we can turn to face the world. And then we can be ready to be steward of our shared and common home, the living planet, our good mother, Earth. Once we are stewards over our own personal dominion, we are free from the human tendencies of conquer and conflict. This is where we may be considered trustworthy to take on responsibilities to steward the world paradigm that we share in collective dominion. Our private, personal, public, and planetary stewardship is each of our responsibilities to take on. We are called to serve for the well-faring stewardship of this generation and for generations to come. Eudaimonian stewards are co-creators of an ever more healthy, resilient, sustainable, stable, safe and secure, just and peaceful world paradigm. The eudaimonian paradigm makes the world work for everybody, without the disadvantage of anybody, ensuring that nobody gets left behind. As we do the good work, which is serving for the eudaimonian welfaring stewardship of all earthbound planetary stakeholders, making sure that everyone may fare well and live the good life. Eudaimonia takes on the responsibility of welfaring stewardship because eudaimonians know that peace on earth is made real and tangible only when we extend goodwill to all planetary stakeholders and secure their well-being. The critical role of eudaimonia is in the binding force of our shared common purpose and the accrual of the common good. The eudaimonian model is firmly grounded in consequential, immutable principles and is well-rounded in scope. This makes for an integrity-bound sphere of influence, going out omnidirectionally and multidimensionally from within the eudaimonian sphere of influence. Where outcome engineering is taking place within so that we can mobilize and actualize the fullest and most sacred potential of well-being. Eudaimonian outcome engineers involve in the whole systems design of the role model, the eudaimonian model, across the disciplinary spectrum of stewardship, guided by the breadth, the depth, the scope of the vision of what is on the set trajectory of a well-faring stewardship continuum. Eudaimonians tackle the most entrenched issues of their time, which are standing in the way of welfaring. Doing this while enabling and empowering all eudaimonians to take on new ways of life, to live the good life, thus reinforcing the collective stewardship of the eudaimonian paradigm. Eudaimonia means be well, and to be well means to center yourself in the best truth you know. Center yourself in the life ways of living the good life. Eudaimonia exists as a proper capitalism, omnidirectional, public good, outcome firm. It cooperatively enfranchises eudaimonian outcome engineers to do the good work of multidimensional provisioning of the lower echelons of society so that everyone may be well, and so we may co-creatively develop civilization along the continuum of eudaimonian welfaring stewardship, working at cooperative welfaring stewardship of the living good Mother Earth and all earthbound planetary stakeholders, so that we may all be well in artful living, which is living together in the eudaimonian city of cities, a template that helps us to serve in living alongside our fellow stewards. Eudaimonian outcome engineers work independently under contracts to work collectively under the common cause initiatives put forth by the eudaimonian efforts to achieve the proper capitalism, intents, and purposes of eudaimonians' welfaring stewardship. The good work to be done is the engineering of outcomes that are of eudaimonian design, which follow the artisanal role model that is the architecture, which is the artisanal enabling of action within schemas, giving rise to the frame and the form of the eudaimonian sphere of influence, and defines and delineates the areas of concern for the authorized deployment of the energy unit, which is contractually assigned to accomplish each common cause initiative. Eudaimonian stewards are mobilized as eudaimonian outcome engineers to secure the principled values of diced tea, ensuring the expenditures of energy unit is virtuous. Proper capitalism is a virtuous economic theory, advancing the truth and validity of mutualities and cooperation, which have all the essential elements of shared prosperity and peaceful progress. Eudaimonian economics advances its prime purpose of provisioning the lower echelons of society towards manifesting the objective prosperity cultivated within the eudaimonian paradigm. This paradigm of prosperity is the direct outcome enriching the lives of every eudaimonian so that we may fare well as we live the good life. Eudaimonian's proper capitalistic approach is called diced tea. It's an acronym. I love acronyms. And they lay out the principled values of eudaimonia, starting with D, diversity. The world works for all planetary stakeholders throughout the eudaimonian paradigm. The I is for inclusion. In the eudaimonian paradigm, nobody gets left behind. C, cooperation. Eudaimonian stewards serve together in mutualities of trust, respect, interest, benefit, ethics, security, and eudaimonians coexist in life ways of the good life, interdependently relying on the social and civic ideals those mutualities represent and foster in society. E stands for equity. Eudaimonia secures the future of well-faring without the disadvantage of anyone. D, demonstrating. Eudaimonian steward role models are all ethics in acknowledgement of the sovereign autonomous personhood of every human individual. This includes honoring them with respect of their inalienable human rights, which include life, liberty, dignity, self-determination, self-governance, all as they pursue their own version of happiness in keeping with eudaimonian ethics. And T, transfiguration. Transformative investment in people and in life spaces, which are what make up the eudaimonian city of cities, infusing values, generating value, adding growth, and developing along lines of outcome initiatives, transformative investments through eudaimonian ways and means, actualizing welfaring by integrating eudaimonian virtue expenditures into a network access of systemic stability and domestic order within the moral legitimacy of eudaimonian ethics, interconnecting among the many islands of coherence which are sourced as the eudaimonian base operations of every city and town within the eudaimonian sphere of influence, which is ever expanding. Cooperating together across networks, the eudaimonian city of cities contains all the fundamental infrastructures, life vital resources, elemental workings, and necessary offerings for people to grow, develop, work, serve, and make changes so they may live the good life and so that others may live the good life too. With that, if you couldn't tell, I'm very enthusiastic about that. And that, I mean, my whole body's tingling right now. I'm so excited about the idea of that. And because I know that's in potential, it is literally in the realm of potential. There is so many viabilities existing in the here and now where that can actually become a continuum, a trajectory of truth, that I am confident, even when, the world's going wrong, I'm able to remain calm and poised in that because I know that this is real. I know that it has so much in it that can make everything right. And I continue to focus on that and do the good work that's necessary in order to build up what I need in personal supports so that I can start implementing the next stages where I'm starting to bring more people in who are going to be able to help to build out, initializing the plans that I have been developing over time, which are kind of like stones that you throw into the river. I remember speaking about this one time with this lady. I'll never forget our meeting. It was a beautiful, wonderful experience. But we were talking and she was just totally blown away about, as I was explaining to her in the broad and general sense what I was working towards. She's like, "Oh, this is incredible." But I explained to her, I want small stones to be able to throw into a cityscape and to be able to have a ripple effect of positive outcome consequences that help to shift the paradigm that people live in, and just throw a bunch of stones into the point of time where all these ripples are having, secondary ripples that are happening off of it. And then eventually you throw enough stones and it fills up a space and you have a stepping stone to start to cross the river in. And instead of having to have all of the force and the weight for, whatever it's going to take to get a big enough stone to lay it down, which is a lot of work, it does not take much to throw a bunch of small pebbles in the right place, the right time, the right way, until it eventually builds up to the right step. Then we can step forward. And then from that place of stability and security, we can take more stones, throw them to do the next step, and eventually we can cross the river together. But if everybody has a small stone to throw into it, everybody's making these massive ripples, and they're all their own ways, and they're all resonating on the same frequency of positivity, and it's all leading towards the outcome intended purpose of achieving welfaring on a continuum of an ever more healthy, sustainable, just, and peaceful world. Sure, there's going to be some unintended negative consequences that are going to happen, but when you're in a sea of coherence of the good life, everybody living the good life, we can easily step in and be there for each other to lift each other up when something goes wrong. And it gives us the sense of what I really think the original spirit of intent of the Declaration of Independence was. Is we, the people of the United States, in order to form, throw in those stones, a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. Everybody's coming behind us. We do ordain and establish this Constitution of the United States. Our whole idea was we declared that we are independent, we are free, we're making our decisions for ourselves. We constituted ourselves in such a way where we gave ourselves the parameters of our objective, and we started living out of that with purpose. That's how our nation was formed. That's how we've gotten to almost 250 years together so far. We can only get so far now. We've come to a blockade in the road where over the years the systems have been so designed to not mind the fact that many people are being left behind because of lack of care. And now so much power has been concentrated in these powerhouses, and a few people hold enormous levers. They have those big rocks that they can throw, so they can get across the river, but, they are already so far ahead where they start throwing those stones. There's a huge gap where the lower echelons of society are left on the other side of the river, and they can't get across because they don't have the capacity to lift those rocks themselves. And government's not turning around facing and be like, oh, well, let's add some steps for you, because it's so self-absorbed and involved with itself that it can't turn around and build a way and means for other people. And so people are being left behind. But the original spirit of intent was independence. We are supposed to be able to have the means to on our own make it. And that we are going to join together, constitutionally bind ourselves together in a republic. So we can republic ourselves, meaning we can change and reconstitute how we arrange ourselves so that we make sure that the best people are put in positions to help to advance everybody together, and that those positions of power are supposed to be leverage points to help to give power back to the people. And the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence are supposed to be the ancillary factors that make sure that too much power doesn't end up on one side opposed to the other. Like the people, making sure the people don't have so much power that they can overthrow the government again, but also making sure the government doesn't have so much power that the people would want to overthrow them. You have to have that space in between that delineates and defines the reasonable, area of operation. And then from that, make sure that the people know what they have to put into the system, and the people in government know what they have to put into the system, so that together we're making the thing that achieves the outcome that we need. And so in this case, it could be maybe the government doesn't have to take the big huge stones and pass it back to the people, and then hopefully the people can lay those big stones. Maybe the government's job is to quarry the damn stones, break them into the smaller piece stones, and then pass them down to the lowest concentration of power, which is the individual people. So then they can throw them out and work together to make concentrated stepping stones for each one of them to go wherever they need, and build out the bridge together in that way. That would be more efficient than it would be for having this chasm of inequality between people, and all of these stones being thrown right in the direction that's empowering the elite echelons of society to have more power, but everybody else is being left behind. It's just not, it doesn't have to be that way. I don't want it to be that way. And it doesn't need to be that way. If we create a constitutional amendment that says, we are getting ourselves back into alignment with understanding what our independence is for and what our unity is about, and we're going to make sure that those two work in consort with one another, so that we have an interdependence, to make sure that it works for everybody without the disadvantage of anybody, so nobody gets left behind. And I believe having a constitutional amendment that adds a fourth branch of government is the means for us to be able to do that. Is the fastest, quickest, not saying it's going to be tomorrow, but it certainly is the most direct path to resolving for the problem of, a government system that can potentially be corrupted because it is amassed too much power. It's shrinking it down to size because it is getting, instead of making the government force itself to be smaller so it's more controllable and manageable, instead it's increasing the size of government, but splitting the power one more time. It's like, you got to think about evolution. We're splitting cells here, so we can divide once more so that we can get bigger, so that we can do more things together. And split and divide in such a way where we can compensate for the inequalities that have happened over time, to make the system more fair, just, reasonable, and right. To make it so that the lower echelons of society are just as powerful as the upper echelons of society, so that nobody can overthrow anybody. But now we're in a power capacity to oscillate with one another, and so that we can get more done because we have more energy and more free-flowing channels of energy to go through, that we can focus intentionally to get stuff done. And if we can get people in positions of government that really believe that that's the best way to make government efficient, is not to shrink it down by removing what it does, but by distinguishing what it does and then giving the mirror effect to the people so that they can do the complementary aspect of it, so that you have, the positive and the negative, in not in the sense of right and wrong, positive, negative, but rather what is necessary in order for the capacity for change, the interchanging transactional transfiguration. It requires negative and positive polarity to be able to move, and then recognizing what needs to be done where, when, at the right time, in order to get everybody to agree this is what we need to do, to establish a sense of consensus, and then assign those people who have power to do what they can, where they can, in all the ways they can, to get things to work out evenly. So if it's society in the lower echelons are saying, oh man, we don't have enough stones to keep throwing into the pond to make or into the river to make the steps to get across, we're running out. Government, put your big thinking caps on and do the good work to figure out how can we quarry some more rocks, break them down, distribute them to the masses so that everybody has what they need so they can keep building, you know, and make it a system of, you know, interdependence and with intention of what we're actually trying to get somewhere very specific together, you know, and which is, like I said, eudaimonia is about living on a continuum that's ever more healthy, sustainable, just, and peaceful. It's very much like, you know, in our Constitution saying, we the people, we pledge to ourselves and our posterity that we're going to do this thing. You know, it was a promise that's lasted almost almost 250 years. Excuse me. But it's lasted that long because we had a framework. Excuse me. Excuse me. Goodness. But we had a framework as to how we were going to move forward. And then everybody agreed, all right, sounds good. Let's get it done. And everybody did their part to be able to make it work. So, obviously, I need to stop talking because I'm getting to the point where I'm getting coughed up. I wanted to, why I wanted to say all this was because, again, right now we're having some really not so great experiences in America, and the consequences that the rest of the world is living in is really unfortunate too. Good people of the world, I apologize for America turning its back on you and for betraying you, and for treating you like you were expendable and that somehow that we weren't in this together trying to work on, you know, making something together. I don't think that this is the way it's going to be forever. And I just hope that you continue to see the potential that's there in there being a restoration of integrities in America for things to be set right here. There's so many good Americans that want this place to be better. Not just for ourselves, but for others, you know. We want to become the leader of the free world again, and we're not that right now because of people in power are trying to take us in a different direction, but we are, you know, we are trying to pull it back from the brink and to set things on the right course where we can get back in alignment with you know, being the leader of the free world again. And what I hope is that what we will be leading is onto the eudaimonian continuum, that potential. I mean, I don't think anything that I said really seems like whimsical, woo-woo, you know, gosh, guys, if we could just do it, it'd be so great. I mean, there's definitely that type of enthusiasm in there. That is a lot of what it started out as. It's like, man, wouldn't it be cool if we could just, like, have an awesome world to live in? You know, like, man, things don't have to be this shitty. Like, it can get better, can't it? Fuck yeah, it can. Look, we could do this, and then that wouldn't be so bad anymore. And hey, look, this over here doesn't have to be that way either. We could do this and this. And, you know, like, if I can see a way to get out of this mess, like, I know that there's other people that can see a way too. And I figure if we start doing, like I said, each of us throwing our stones, what little bits we have, and if we throw it in a similar direction, eventually over time that's going to pile up and give us a stepping stone to move forward. And that's why I believe focusing on creating a constitutional amendment to add a fourth branch of government, the civics branch, empower the people, help them get personal dominion so they have power, and then allow them to have the capacity to hold, you know, people in positions of government to account. And then focusing on having a proper intended use for our capitalism. Like, I believe capitalism works, but late stage capitalism is fundamentally broken, and the reason why we have such a huge inequality, deepening inequality in society, and the trajectory that the current regime is taking us is going to widen that gap. It's going to be worse. But we can fix that by working together. If we have a proper intended use for our capitalism, it can be put to work, everybody doing their version of it to achieve the same outcomes we desire. And that's what I'm hoping to achieve. Goodness. Sorry. With that, I hope I've spread a little bit of hope to the world. I know it's not much in terms of, I'm not out there with a little banner petitioning and loudspeaker, blowhorn, bullhorn speaking out to everybody, and I don't have a large crowd of people to talk to in front of me. It's just me by myself with you here, person in the screen of distance on the other side of the screen listening. Whoever's tuning in is tuning in, whoever's tuning out is tuning out. But I know that what I'm contributing is of value, and it's going to benefit you in some way. I'm hoping it's going to resonate with you. It's going to get you to start thinking about the ways that this might work out. I hope you're taking what I'm offering and seeing the potential and reimagine the world, and then do what you can to start rebuilding it. Because as one of my favorite people, Buckminster Fuller, says, you don't, defeat the old, broken, scary, terrible, awful, cruel, evil system by fighting it. You simply make it obsolete by creating something that's new and better and so much more capable than that ever could be. And then that just ceases to exist. Building something tangible, literally creating something where nothing existed before, nullifies what came before, as long as this is a better iteration. Right? So with that, hopefully we can take that charge moving forward. I continue to do what I can where I am in order to work towards that. I keep refining the work that I'm doing. Right now I'm focusing on some very personal things that I need to address because they are deep to the core of my soul print. Absolutely fundamental. It's necessary and essential for me to do these things that I'm doing right now in my life, so that I am empowered and able to take the next step in the trajectory that I have set for myself and been long moving in alignment with. Because it's important to me that I am ready and able to entirely focus on the tremendous amount of responsibilities I'm about to take on myself. And it's not like I have a bunch of stuff that I have to take care of. It's just a few little minor housekeeping things. And then just one very, very special, very deeply personal, very important to my heart song experience that I need to live out, because following my heart song is telling me this is where I'm meant to be, this is what I need to do, this is what it's all been about. And even though I've tried many times to deny that and to remove myself from that trajectory, it's truth for me. And because it's the truth, I can't deny it. And karma keeps bringing me back into it. And because I'm aware of it, because I'm a conscious person, and I recognize the pattern of the universe, I listen to my heart song, I listen to the truth. I keep falling in alignment with it. And when I try to deny it, it's like karma, nope, gotta focus on it. And when I start to see the consequences coming together, I kind of see what's about to happen. I kind of like send out the warning, like, hey, guess what is the impending, incoming, everybody watch out sort of thing. Not in a sense of like to try to scare people, but it's just like, I realize that once I come back into alignment with this truth, I'm going to be left in a position of responsibility. And if I'm not empowered in the right ways at the right time, the right reasons, with the necessary supports that I require, I'm not going to be able to fulfill my role in that moment to make sure that there is the appropriate counter force for good that happens. And so it's, knowing your responsibilities in the world and understanding like what is going to be expected of you, and then recognizing like there's some things that I'm going to have to do before I can be that capable, and then preparing yourself in advance for it. It's just knowing where you're going and recognizing what you have to do along the way. But then realizing like where my heart sings for me to be. I can't avoid that. I have to go where my heart sings for me to go. And I live in such a way where I don't have expectations. I have anticipations. I anticipate that other people are going to bring their best. And I hope that people would anticipate that I would bring my best too. It doesn't always work out that way because we're humans, Not everything can be perfect. But that's why we have to have graces for one another, And we need to accept there's going to be times where misunderstandings, intentional or unintentional, are going to arise. And we just have to find a way back into love with one another in that sphere of mutual respects and interests to say, what can we do from here to move forward? Sometimes that means you really have to build bridges together intentionally to make that happen. And it's harder to build those bridges when you're not sharing the same type of life experience as others, So you have to find a common through line to be able to build together. And that's why I really think, I have made a bunch of political science videos in terms of my political philosophies, because it's important for me to share that publicly so people have reference to go back to and see where I'm coming from, where I've been, and how I've learned and grown over time. Setting the precedence, so to speak. But in one of my videos, I talk about the importance of, like knowing where I am, when I am, what I'm about, what I'm working on, and the value of establishing a network of communication channels to be able to address people that you may not be so directly close to, so that you can find common grounds and establish rapport. And one of those things is built in the digital realm, because it's easy to build in the digital realm, an architecture of such where it's like a scaffolding for our lives, and that it helps us to be able to find each other, and to be able to connect with one another and co-creatively build out, trust and rapport and the things that are necessary for being able to work together with people, but also excuse me, to solve for problems that arise in terms of like conflicting interests, or maybe not even conflicting interests in terms of like, I want to get this out of it, because again, I don't operate off of expectations, it's anticipations. I operate off of a trifecta of intentions. So I'm approaching it in multiple ways in order to say, like, I'm trying to give the appropriate angling so that when I approach somebody, we can find the right degrees of orientation to come into mutual accord. It's kind of like a bird in flight. And so if, let's think of it in terms of, excuse me, like an airplane that is a fueling jet that's trying to fuel a jet in the air. You have to have the right perfect timing. Otherwise you hit each other and you're both screwed. So you need to be able to come into accordance with one another in just the right timing, in just the right way. And I believe that's something that can be built out. I know it's something that can be built out, and I know that it can be operational. It can be used for, good purposes, not nefarious ones, with intention to set things right. I believe this is a framework that everybody can use, and we will have better human relationships as a consequence for it, a good consequence for it. And it will help us to be able to resolve a lot of the human challenges that we have, social awkwardnesses that we have with one another. It's difficult when you meet somebody new. There's so much uncertainty that's there. And I have that problem because I'm a very peculiar person. And so I created a framework by which to meet people and break the ice with them in such a way that is supposed to be, the proper intended use, is supposed to be able to help to just enjoy each other's presence. Like, bless me with your presence. Be here, with me in this moment, in this time. I'll give you a little, you give me a little, and we're being reciprocal in our experience. It's not transactional, like I give, I take, it's not that sort of thing, but it's like enjoying the experience, having a conversation with each other in an intentional way. And if you're framing it out into an architectured sense, it helps to make more sense of it. And then it also is cool because it's like a toy that you get to play with together and figure out the cool, interesting, surprising little ways that it can do different things. And it builds rapport and it builds trust. It also lets you enjoy people in a totally different way. And having a shared common experience puts you automatically, naturally in a sphere of trust. And when you're in that sphere, then from there you can grow that sphere of trust much larger. And as you grow it larger, you have more degrees of separation from each other. So there's more space in between to do more together in that space in between. So eventually over time, what starts off as like a seemingly rigid frame that seems to be shrunk down to size is really doing the good work of bringing the angles to a point so then it can expand out to the point where then you can set more angles and then spread out again. It's a type of growth. So I hope in that type, again, I'm a builder, so everything has to be mechanized, and it has orientation, and it has direction, it has frame, it has purpose, it has meaning. And so building out this capacity to play around with ideas with another person in order to break the ice so you can understand them, they can understand you, is so important. Like, not just in the sense of like so life enriching to know that you can meet somebody on a truly fundamental level, right? But also how many times I've had misunderstandings with people because they couldn't fathom what I meant by a thing because there was no contextualization for it. And if only they could see the way that they made me feel, or the way I feel about them, then they would understand. And then they would be able to know what they must do in order to continue to move into mutual understandings and grow that sphere of influence that we are co-creating together. I think that there's so much opportunity in the digital space to create that potential for people that would change personal relationships. It'll change family relationships. Thank the Lord for that. And it would change relationships with like people in their government, and it will change relationships with, you know, other nations amongst other nations. You know, the diced tea that I explained earlier is, and I love acronyms, they're so great. There's a acronym that I have in one of my other videos that calls for, it's called PEACE, which is a framework, kind of like what I just doggerel sum up described, specifically for a president to be able to use so that they can connect directly with the voice of the people, so that they are actually enacting on the will of the people. Like the people willingly give their information to this internalized digital structure that the president then takes the essence of distilled information and acts upon it in the most effective, efficient way possible within the means of its, you know, the president's role and capacity to operate the mechanizations within the administration that they find themselves in. And then to, if necessary, build out some new components, you know, going back to the whole thing where right now the current regime is like a bunch of monkeys pressing buttons and they have no idea what's going on. Like, this would be a means for this instrumental device to move along with every single president, and all the people will always know that's how you can interact with the president. And it becomes a part of our ontology to do so. And then the president can, you know, through each iteration of presidents that we have, would be able to reliably use that in such a way to carry out the will of the people, thinking that as an intelligent way to solve for the same problem that I was just saying about how do you transmute a misunderstanding into an understanding if you can't find common ground. And this pieced president's everyday assistant is able to translate the will of the people into actionable means where the government can intervene on behalf of the people, and intercede when necessary, so that they can help the people to help themselves, so that they can help others, essentially. So I see everything in the terms of like mechanization, not in the sense of like I want everything to be you know, like an automated system and to remove the humanity from it. Like, I really believe in the concept of like a cyber symbiotic relationship with technology, where our technology is but an extension of our humanity, and it helps us to be more human. Especially in the ways where in an increasingly digital world, our phones are detaching us from reality and from each other, you know, and our technology should be doing more to connect us as humans, help us to tap into the innate intelligence of humanity that exists, like the alignment and attunement with, you know, your, what I call heart song, the truth of your fabric and your being. You know, put that in such a sense where it externalizes it through technology that helps you to read back to you where you are and when you are, so you know who you are. This is a fundamentally important thing that would help enrich the lives of everybody if we had that. And then if you're able to share that with other people, imagine meeting friends in that capacity. Imagine meeting your life partner in that way. You know, imagine selecting and electing a president in that way. You know, you really truly know who this person is at the core. You know whether you can trust them. You know what they're going to do for you. You understand their jurisprudence, their idea of philosophy of law. Like, what does it mean for things to be just, fair, reasonable, right? And if you can see from their perspective, I mean, we already put profiles on social media to put ourselves out there, but this would really be able to help people hone in and say, well, what does this mean to you? And then they would be able to extract that information easily because your architect framework says, well, here, that's what it is. You want to know? Ask the question, answer received. Simple as that. At least it should be. That's how I see technology evolving, especially in the realms of artificial intelligence, because I had to go through a personal revelation on that one. It was really hard for me to get back into a space where it wasn't the most repulsive word in existence to me, which was really weird because at one point in time it was a massive curiosity. It was very fascinating, very interesting. But now I'm back into the position of like understanding proper intended use, and so it's put in its place and it doesn't have power of like being fearful to me. I am not an AI professional. I'm not an expert in it. I don't know what these people call AI. To me, it's an artifice of intelligence that can better inform systems so that they can carry out functions, so that they can do the appropriate intended operations, so that a very intentional outcome is achieved in the right time, the right place, for the right reasons. And in such a way that's sensical so that a human naturally takes it in and says, aha, yes, I see. I think that's the problem with technology, is it's like conforming you to how it is designed. Change yourself to fit me, instead of, something that I can design to align with myself, and that type of alignment is how other people can help to better perceive me, to better see me. Imagine technology being able to assist us to, your vibe attracts your tribe sort of thing. To me, it's important to not just build out mechanisms that are intelligent in terms of their capacity to fulfill something in a reasonable way, by me putting in the effort that's necessary and then waiting patiently enough for the imminent moment of arrival, when it's all supposed to unfold and come into its own, so that it can come out into another opportunity of development from there, what one might term progress or growth, the outcome tangibilities. And if you have tooling in the sense of like something that you can fine tune yourself, so like an instrument that can help carry out what you need, help keep you in alignment with where you want to go, and then help other people to understand where you're coming from, so that you can decide if you want to go in the same way, and then be able to build up collaborations with other people through these interesting network channels of communication that is established because you have these architect frameworks to be able to work with one another. Imagine what we would be capable of doing if we had that. I mean, right now we have, the visual concepts, we have vocal concepts, and we have, type language concepts where we can hear each other, we can see each other, and we can read about each other. But imagine if we added, a sixth sense to our capacity to perceive one another, and use that in a means to find our tribe, find our life partners, find where we belong in the world, find out about a candidate that you would want to vote for into a position, and really know whether that person's trustworthy or not. What are your intentions? and then to learn that framework and then work with it, because you realize it seems like it's a rigid system, but actually it's super dynamic. And it's like the concept of, there's only 4 chords, but you can play a whole lot of different types of music with just 4 chords, or there's, only a few flavors, but those few flavors can turn into many different recipes. It's all just a matter of the creator themselves, the human ingenuity of the individual, how they want to transform that, transmute that into something else. And technology is meant to help us to do that. Innovation is part of our capacity to externalize our evolution, to assist us to further evolve into greater human capacities. But the problem is technology as it stands now is really suppressing a lot of our human evolution, and that's why we have people that are going back into the repressive, aggressive, heathen times in terms of their human behavior towards each other. And we have violence and cruelty all over the place because people just don't have this sense of what's right and wrong anymore. Well, because it's really hard to tell how you resonate with another person unless you're in the same space as them. And then you literally, your heart frequencies align with one another. And like once you're in a heart frequency space with somebody, you sync up with them and you're forever synced up in some capacity. The more time you spend with somebody, the more synced up you get, and the more you become comfortable with them and more aligned and attuned with them. And the more you match each other and become complement with one another. And that's why it's important you find the right type of people to pair up with, because then you amplify each other in beautiful ways. And you have amazingly awesome experiences that you share together, that you just will never find anywhere else. It's so special. It's so unique. It's so deeply a part of your person. You feel like a whole new person because of that. And you feel alive, like you could have been on the brink of death, and then you enter in the space with the right person, and your heart songs sync up, and you start resonating on the same level with each other, and then you become intertwined with one another. And it's a beautiful place to be, because in that space you're able to better see where somebody's coming from. You're sympathetic to this other person because of it. And even if you're far away, you still have a sensibility of the sympathies that are there. So that it's kind of like the twin effect. Scientific studies did research of identical twins that were split at birth, and then realized they, even at great distances, were comparatively similar in behaviors and things like that. They also were able to sense that something was going on. It's definitely something. I'll tell you this, being a mother, you have the mother's instinct. It's like, I know my child's in danger. Like, oh, I know something's happening. It's like the little hairs in the back of your neck stand up, It's like your spidey sense starts tingling and you're like, oh, I'm on alert. It's that type of thing that you have with another person when you harmoniously sync with them. And if you spend enough time with each other, and the more that you spend time with each other, that improves. And so I think that's why the fact that we don't spend enough time in living spaces with each other, like actual living spaces instead of just screen a distance sort of thing, we're losing touch, the human touch. And because of that, people are forgetting how to foster human relationships, and we're becoming more isolated and lonely, and that's not good for our human development. And we're becoming repressed for the need for human connection and touch, and then it manifests in negative ways when people are seeking it. So anything that can foster the connections for people to bring them together in places where they can heart resonant sync with each other, even if they aren't like soulmates, like, you know, because when you know, but even when, if the case is that you're not, soulmates or something, you can still sync with another individual and become sympathetic to them. So you sense what's happening to them. You sense that they need you, and so you pick up the phone and you call. Or you're like, be doing something, and then all of a sudden that person comes to your mind and it's like, I wonder where they are now. And then maybe you get an inclining of what that is. That's a human sense that is dulled in society. And it can be restored, but only if we have the right type of innovations to help to bring that out and to foster those connections so we have real world connections. Otherwise, it's going to start to be like a sense that we have that doesn't get used and then it goes away. And then we're going to be emotionless flesh vessels that are incapable of empathy. And then you make poor decisions about ruining other people's lives without fearing the consequences of it because it doesn't matter to you, And imagine if we have more people to be able to be compassionate with one another and connect at a deep human level, and that we have innovative technologies that help us to do that. We would have a lot less conflict and misunderstandings. We would have a lot less pain and suffering. There'd be less depression. There'd be more joyful moments. There'd be more collaborations. There'd be more beautiful things being built. There'd be more happiness and joy in the world. There would be less conflict because we would be able to come together and, hash it out to discover what the misunderstanding is and then fix the problems moving from there. There's so much potential to solve for these problems. And I know it sounds like it's an oversimplification to just, say we can build a thing and it will solve our problems, but I really do believe in that. And knowing that if we can do that, if we can build out the right things, right innovations, and we implement them in the right ways, then we'll be able to do so much more to help one another level up at life. And then once we're able to level up at life, imagine what we can become. I mean, right now things are terrible, they're bad. God, the world sucks. But if we are able to bring hope to people in terms of like, this is a tangibility, we're able to give it to you and you can do things with it that are going to guarantee your well-being. And, if you participate in this and we do this together as a group, we will be able to, like I said, the small stone effect. You can do a little, I can do a little, but when we all do a little, then it becomes a lot. And then one of the sayings I like to say is like, it's not about trying to get the people in power to care more. It's to get people in power who care more, because you're not going to be able to convince the POTUS 47 regime to care enough to make a difference to improve your life. They don't care about you. And as much as they, say they care, it's not about you. They've proven that's not what matters to them. So we have to care about ourselves and each other and look after one another, and then start looking for the leadership that can replace that regime. Start looking for those who have brilliant ideas like the one I just presented to you. Of this grand vision of what is to come. Like, mind you, I didn't share the details of everything. If you want to know more, please go look at my other videos. There's plenty of things listed all about different various aspects of ways to present this and let you know what's possible. But of course, even at that, there's still more details, and I'm more of a less wanting to talk about it and express it. I'm more of a want to build it type of person. And so I'm trying to right now get myself in a position so that I can build those things out. But I'm a person of modest means, been that way all my whole life. You know, I don't come from abundance of stuff and things and money. I come from abundance of, you know, joy and living goodness and things that matter and being of service to others. And, you know, that's something that doesn't come with a cost, you know, like the price that I pay forward to what's to come is like, you know, the constancy of my life of knowing that I'm living my heart song in alignment with the truth, that I'm meant to be here to serve, to help people, even if it's at my own disadvantage. Like, I know that I can help these people, and I'm going to, because that is what I sense is what I can do to be of best service. And because I've done that, I haven't schemed a way to funnel money rendering for my service. You know, to me, it's like work is doing something worthy, and a job is to render value for fair compensation. And in my mind, I'm well compensated with simple gratitude, you know, but hey, a girl's got to eat, and I have, you know, basic life needs that I have to meet. So I do what work I have to do in order to keep, you know, myself living, but I don't have enough abundance to invest into turning my idea into a business startup that can change everything, you know, just by my own simple means. I will need help from other people to be able to make that work. And that is where I'm at right now, is needing to have outside help to give me the means so that I can, you know, turn it into the modes and the methods and everything else to actually execute on the plans and the initiatives that I've built out over the years to be able to change things. My hope is that one day what I do would be such an evidence in itself. It'd be proof beyond measure. It would just be self-evident of the goodness that humanity needs, that someone might consider me to be worthy of becoming president of the United States. And not because I'm like, pick me, you know, and I could do this thing, but rather just like, wouldn't you want somebody to lead you who is that thoughtful and conscious and considerate, who really has those types of intentions, and who really pushes themselves to achieve these sorts of things? You know, I want my campaigning to be what I'm able to do to bring these, you know, innovations into cities to help to foster growth and well-being for people inside a city so they can grow. You know, giving people the stones so that they can work together, and then do so with the sense of like, that would be an excellent role model for somebody to become president. Not to say that I'm ambitioning for it, but like, I want people to think of a leader as someone as such that would do these things for them, you know, and not for needing to get something back in return. And whatever I do get out of it, I know it's worth it, because to me, again, the gratitude's all I really, really even want. Because to me, it's recognition of a job well done, you know? I wish the world didn't require that we had money, and I do envision a truth pathway, eternal truth pathway to a point where we don't have money at all. There's no, you know, money system. And, you know, blessed be that day, because it's going to be a whole new world, and it's going to be wonderful. But it's going to take a lot of work to get there, because money is deeply embedded in our system. But, you know, it reminds me of the book, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, where Douglas Adams, the author, says in one of the little blurbs, I believe it's in the first book, it says, like, you know, for years, people we're moving little green pieces of paper so that they can be happy. And that's kind of weird because it wasn't the green pieces of paper that were unhappy, dog girl sum up. But essentially it was just saying, like, why are we so concerned about pointless pieces of paper, or, in the digital realm, digital relationship to a decimal point, when that's not the thing that we actually want. We want the outcome. And for me, it's like, if I can achieve the outcome that I'm intending, the proper intended outcome that I'm working towards, and it does the good work that I want it to do, and the people recognize, wow, this is a thing that did awesome for my life. My life is so much gooder. It's more better than it ever was because of this thing that happened to me. Thank God that it did, and that's all I need. Like, the gratitude of saying, it's good, you like it, awesome, I'm glad. Moving on. Lots of work to be done, no time to waste, basking in the glory of my awesomeness like POTUS 47 likes to do. If he spent just a quarter of the time that he spends, like, me about everything, about how great and wonderful and awesome he is, he could actually, use his position of authority to make a difference in the lives of the people. Wasn't that what he said he wanted to do, why he wanted to be president? But I know that there's something about what I would be empowered to do, and I'm working towards it. And then once I get to the place of accumulating enough supports that are necessary, to the mutual supports that I need to start initiating this and following through on it in all the various different ways that I have in pending execution, I'll be able to roll that out. And I hope that it would become that model of where people would say, man, I want that type of leadership in the roles of decision making. And then other people who recognize how great this idea is, and they come in and they, help organize within the organization that I'm creating, they then become leaders themselves, don't they? And the whole organization is about multiple organs, not one organ and runs the whole show, but multiple organs doing their own thing, working together in a massive cohesive unit. And those people can start getting in positions of decision-making power and take the mindset of, like, there's this really great model that I've been using to help organize people together to improve their lifestyles, welcoming them into a situation they can thrive in. And all of these people have benefited. I want to get into a role of position of decision making to help expand that to as many people as possible within the realm of responsibility that position holds, and it would give so much legitimacy to so many individual people from every rank of position in society, from the person that's going to be on a school board making decisions about curriculum all the way up to a presidency, local city councils and, state legislators and, all the way up to people that are actually working in, various state agencies and things like that. Those people getting into those roles who have come from a place of being in this, shared experience of eudaimonia, working on it together, their value alignments are the same as the value alignments of all these other people. And that consistency amongst everyone makes them work as a super efficient, multi-organ network. It's kind of like a human body, if you think about it, like many different organs. They all have their own specific job doing their own things, independent from one another, but yet all of them working as one to foster the well-being of the individual life that, that it renders, in these flesh vessels that we call bodies. So if we have a network effect of decentralized, lowest concentration of power, but all of those people are in the shared common experience of working out the problems of solving for, the eudaimonia, answer of how do we, as a collective, achieve a collective cultural shift of the whole of humanity, aligned and in tune with an ever more healthy, sustainable, just, and peaceful world, moving on a continuum of stewardship that fosters, planetarian, communitous, societal, personal, and social, stewardship, so that everything works in a way that's securing well-being for everyone, so nobody gets left behind, nobody's put at a disadvantage, all of these things. And if we're all working in that same framework, that mental construct that says, yes, that's what living the good life is, and that is what we consider well-being, and that's how it is fostered, and that's how it can be exacted, and that's how it can lift people up, that's how it provisions the lower echelons of society. And then every person in every chain of responsibility of decision making has that same type of framework. Imagine what the world would be, That's efficiency. If you want to call anything efficient, it would be, the perfect, beautiful mind meld. And it's not off of force. It's not, like, I'm going to make you do this thing, but it's a force of good. And it's reinforced by the good that we do together. And, in such a way that we can do it for generations. Like, that sounds like a way better way to invest ourselves into the future than it is to, continue to fall over ourselves in desperation to save ourselves from the negative outcome consequences of very shitty decision making happening by the POTUS 47 regime. These people are out of their mind. And for any of them, I'm not us versus theming at all, but like anybody part of the MAGA cohort, anybody who's really trying to all in with POTUS 47 regime, like, I'm not trying to put you down. Like, I understand where you're coming from because I can put myself in your shoes. I hear your truth. I know where you're going, but you're wrong. And I'm not saying that because, like, some level of superiority here, I'm better than you, or any of that kind of stuff. Like, this is a very humble position I'm coming from. Just knowing simple, basic truth, that you're wrong. And you're going to come into that understanding over time. And I pray for the graces to be there for you in your hour of personal revelation. But trying to compel you to come to the side of the light, right? It's more important to know that you're doing something that everybody can agree with than to do something that you're going to have to force other people to just tolerate. You know what I'm saying? Like, how much of your time and effort and energy of the people of the MAGA cohort, how much time, effort, and energy do you have to spend to convince people that abuse is okay? How much time, effort, and energy do you spend gaslighting people? Imagine, because that's intelligence, malevolent intelligence, but it's intelligence. Imagine using that for a force of good. Imagine using your beautiful brains of human ingenuity towards ends that are not about harming or hurting your brothers and sisters, your fellow human beings. Like, you can do good. And I think creating eudaimonia gives you the context by which you can be invited into that situation so you can do good. And my hope is that we can all just establish a situation of, we don't need to blame or shame or, hold anybody to past models or something like that. Forgiveness is a real thing. It's always here in the imminent moment. You forgive, you let go, you embrace the change, and you move forward on the path of, a peaceful path of a peaceful accord. And you do that not by like saying, do you remember the time when you're a piece of shit? Like, nobody needs that constantly thrown in their face unless they're being a piece of shit again. It's like, dude, we thought you got over that, you know? Like, that's fine. Because again, social sanctioning is important. But, you know, let it all be in the past. Bring everybody into the full meridian light of a common collective bond. Let everybody stop being shitty. Give them an opportunity to do the right thing. And I believe the good humanity will just, their hearts will sing for it. Naturally, they'll be compelled to, because it is what is most natural, you know. But we have to show them the way. And I have been deep in thought, in consideration, in this gray area to discover what that means and how it can be put together. And it's a lot of time spent doing that, and then coming into society where I need to, how I need to get a feel for what it's like, so I can actually stay in touch with the common human touch, because that's super important to me. And then take that all in a vast synthesis of reworking my models to make sure when I am implementing these initiatives that they're going to hit on the mark every time. I want it to be a orchestration of a symphony, and I want all the parts playing their part at the right time, you know, in the right ways. And I want it to be obvious and apparent, the effect, to the point where, you know, the saying goes, like, be so good they can't ignore you. Because then once people are like, what is going on here? They see, and then they start paying attention. They're like, oh, what's this all about? And they want to learn more. And then they're welcomed in with invite. And then they take the opportunity, you know, take that leap of faith. And it's like, wow, this is actually kind of cool. Like, I didn't know things could be this way. You know, what's this all about? I'm curious to learn more. And then it becomes this positive reinforcing experience that we share with everybody, you know, and we enter in a sphere of trust with each other, and we grow it out and we share it with many others. And then we're shifting the paradigm together. So what we're experiencing now, we don't have to experience anymore. You know, the bad can go away and the good can get better if we try. So with that, I'm grateful for your valuable time and attention. I know it's been a really long time. Even after my coughing fit earlier, I was like, I should probably stop talking, but I kept going on. But this is because I'm so compelled to share this. Like, if you could only see what I can see. Like, I show bits and parts as much as I can, and I grasp from, you know, the meridian truth, you know, of light that illuminates everything with this vast potential that I can see. I try to formalize it and package it in such a way that people can see it, but it's hard to do because it's like a living answer of like, this is it, you know? And so it's kind of slowing down sometimes. I'm learning new models and new ways to be more in the moment, so it's not such a slow process. Trying to like build things out to be like, look here right now at this time in this way and tell me what you see, because there's something really cool that's happening here, and if you can see it too, all right, we're in the same realm of truth. Let's build in that space together so that we can build out a more hardening truth that then becomes a kernel of understanding that other people can take out of our context and it's still relevant. You know, that's the ideal here. But only so much can be done at any one time. And I have my good work of crafting, you know, my business models and my business plans and how it's going to be implemented, because as soon as I have the capacity to initiate, I need to be able to, you know, hit the ground running, as they say. And until I have the means to do that, I have to focus on, you know, as much positive refinement as possible, and then also keeping it up to date with current information so it's not falling behind. And then also being aware of the condition and state of the world, so that, I don't fall out of alignment and attunement with it, because you can hermit yourself off into a corner somewhere, and the world will just pass you by. But it's difficult to stay in timing with current events if you don't at least every once in a while come in and pop out of your shell every once in a while, as the shy turtle would say. And with that, I'm grateful that I was able to be unshy for at least a little bit of time here with you to talk about these things, and to express what I hope will give people, a sense of like, things are bad. The administration's doing the wrong thing. Don't go wrong with them, please, guys. Like, don't be the shitty version of yourself. Please just really try to model good humanity and find people that are like-minded, that want to build out a better world together and build the better world together. And if you're so compelled and interested in what I'm working on, seek me out, and we shall find out how we can work together to take your arts and crafts capacities and combine them with my own, because everybody has a craftsmanship, like my core craftsmanship is engineering and building, but also deeper than that is like caregiving and whatnot. So that goes through every layer of everything I do. I'm literally somebody that you can give a couple of hand tools to a pile of random junk, and I will do something amazing out of it. I love to tinker and to just make something out of seemingly nothing. But other people have different talents that I will never be able to, to master. And I need everybody to be their best and whatever their craft is, to cultivate that and bring it to the table. Bring your best to the table, because we all need to sit at the table. And we all need to together work out building out the future. We don't have time for infighting. We don't have time to piss, moan, bitch, and complain. We don't have time to hold resentments or, plot revenges and, seek vengeance and retaliation, these sorts of things. It's so unnecessary. I like constructive rather than destructive things. And, again, righteous anger is totally appropriate, and it's important to socially sanction people, but, violently attacking side against side is disgusting, vitriol, and I just don't like it. It makes me feel repulsed in a terrible sense. Not repulsed in the sense of like, polarity repulsions that are necessary for, cohesive units to exist together. But like, everything about that's wrong. Like, I don't watch horror movies for a very specific reason, like that's not my vibe at all. And so I stay away from those sorts of things because it's such a toxification and I don't want to be polluted by it. And even though it works for some people, like some people that's totally their vibe, and that's fine, everybody has their tribe that they try to find where they belong in. And I just know where my boundaries are, and boundaries are the distance by which I can love myself and you at the same time. So like, I know when I'm with a person or I'm, considering a person, I know whether or not I belong in their world. And everybody evolves and changes over time, but there's a very few people that I have come to know at a deeper level that even though there's things about them I don't like, I genuinely deeply love them, respect them, and appreciate them. And that's a solid constant truth, and that's a point of strength, of integrity that can do amazing things, because it's really hard to find those type of people in the world that you can like really give yourself completely to an experience, knowing that you're vulnerable and they know you're vulnerable, and to just feel safe, and how great that feels. I wish that we could all meet those type of people, and I hope that one day we can find a way to do that. But in the meantime, I'm gonna continue to stay away from those people that I find that are repulsive, and hope that as I continue to speak my truth, I will resonate with whoever is my tribe. Hopefully attract people that are maybe necessarily my tribe, but are like, I can't accept everything you say. I'm not in total 100% agreement, but what you're offering sounds a fuck ton better than what's being offered by the, crazy nutsos that are making stupid decisions to ruin perfectly good things, I know there's about to be some really bad stuff that's going to happen in terms of outcome consequences, that's going to be more a slap in the face than has been in recent days, with finding about carelessness and lack of consciousness leading to leaks of national security information in a willy fucking nilly way. Again, excuse any of my poor language. I'm not doing it to offend people. It's an expressive way to emphasize the importance of something. But the outcome consequences we're about to see are way worse than that. And that was bad. That was really bad. And I just hope that what I've offered in terms of hope will be, enough to, I don't want to, have to hold the torch up for everybody and be there for everybody at all times to hold up the torch so they see the light. I'm really hoping they can just like find the light within, see within themselves like the hope of what I've offered, and be like, that resonates with me. Yeah, we got this. It's going to be all right. And that'll be enough to get us through. And, and thank God for all of the incredibly courageous people who are standing up for justice and for fairness and for equality and for protecting innocence and for standing up to, tyrants, and to stave off tyranny, and to just be good humanity, role modeling that to society so that we don't lose our way. I know there's so many people that are out there that are like that right now, and I'm just really grateful for you. Like, you give me hope, You remind me that the world is not a total waste. And that's important for my work. That's the hope I need to continue to do what I do. And then what I continue to do, hopefully, is hope to other people that, it can touch. And we're keeping that flame lit in all of us that'll get us through, And then keep shining the light, be that role model example, so that, the people who are doing the wrong thing right now will see the role modeling of good, recognize it within themselves, and then want to be more about it. And then we can transmute their, bad humanity into good humanity, and, do some radical conversion on the spot, Anyway, again, thank you for your valuable time and attention and consideration. Until next time, I appreciate you, and be well.